A new report from Data for Progress and commissioned by Justice Democrats show that for the Democratic Party to win, they need to move left on issues. Now, for a lot of you watching this, you likely already know this, but I'm going to go through some data here and some charts that I find to be really interesting. So first up, the study says this up front. First, this report shows that a pivot towards the center is poison for the Democratic primary electorate, using historical data to show the increasing liberalism of Democratic voters on core progressive values. Second, this report shows that marginal voters and non-voters support key progressive policies and could form a durable base for the Democratic Party. Finally, this report shows that many Democratic incumbents are failing their constituents by opposing progressive policies with broad-based support. So now I'm going to go over some of the charts from this report that caught my eye. Now, the first one here is the beliefs of white Democrats on racial inequality. So, according to the report, 2016 was the first year on record in which more white Democrats attributed racial inequality to discrimination, rather than a lack of willpower among black people. So that once popular talking point of pull yourself up by your bootstraps no longer works. People now recognize that you can't pull yourself up if you don't have the bootstraps to begin with. Now, I think a large reason for the uptick in this number is because of Black Lives Matter. So the Black Lives Matter movement over the past several years has now shown people, a lot of white people, the issues that people of color actually face, and that it's not just about personal responsibility, but it is in fact about systemic racism. Now, another number that backs up that support for Black Lives Matter is this chart here, showing that Democratic voters under 45 have a more favorable view of Black Lives Matter than even Hillary Clinton. And another chart that shows high support for policies facing minorities is this one, with a combined 85% of Democratic voters supporting a path to citizenship. Now, another area that this report covered is the redistribution of wealth. Now, that term scares a lot of people. Oh, no, we can't redistribute wealth because that means people at the bottom will get breaks they didn't earn. Well, the fact is America already redistributes wealth, but it goes to the top. So this recent tax cut is a perfect example where the top 1% got 82% of the benefits. And that equals out to about $61,920 for the average 1%er. Now they'll tell you, oh yeah, but the middle class is also getting a tax break. Yeah, like $70, $100, maybe even $200. But how does that compare to the $61,000 for the richest 1% that don't need it? So this system is already designed in a way where it works against the average person. So it's no surprise that most Democratic primary voters are in support of actual redistribution of wealth to people that actually need it. So 80% of Democratic primary voters believe the government should reduce inequality. 81% believe the government should increase services and spending. 86% believe the government should guarantee health care. 92% believe the government should regulate banks more. And 92% believe the government should implement millionaires' tax. And as the study points out, despite the fact that more than 90% of Democratic primary voters support increasing regulation on banks, 16 Democrats voted with Republicans to decrease regulation on banks. And then when the data on government spending is broken down even further, it shows that Democratic primary voters want to see increased spending in all areas, including Social Security, aid to poor, childcare, protecting the environment, public schools, and science and technology. And it's not just Democratic voters that hold progressive positions. So when looking at the national support for some progressive policies, you might be surprised at some of the results. So 66% of voters say to end mandatory minimums that have led to mass incarceration. 52% oppose the Hyde Amendment, which is a provision that bars the use of federal funds for abortions. 54% support a path to citizenship for undocumented Americans. 66% say the EPA must regulate CO2. 58% want more spending on infrastructure. 59% want to see the minimum wage increased to $15 an hour. 60% say legalize marijuana, and actually a recent Gallup poll put that number even higher at 64%. 63% support Medicare for all, a position that most Democrats in Congress think is too radical even for their own voters. And 62% support a financial transaction tax, which is a tax applied to the trading of stocks and bonds. But despite what most Americans want, they get ignored, because most Americans don't have billions of dollars to buy elections. So the majority actually has less influence than the wealthy minority. And that's shown in this next chart, where only 61% of Senate Democrats support a $15 an hour minimum wage, when a massive 76% of their states show majority support on the issue. But the disconnect is even more obvious when looking at Medicare for All, where only 33% of Senate Democrats support the policy, while 71% of their states show a majority want a Medicare for All system. Now, there's a lot more data in the report that I didn't get to, but if you want to read through it, I'll link to it below the video. Ultimately, though, what this report shows us is that, yes, the Democratic Party needs to move left on policy. Now, that's something that a lot of us already knew, but even nationally, among most Americans, there is support for progressive policy, like legalizing marijuana and Medicare for All. Now, when it comes to the midterms, I think the Democratic Party is going to win a lot of these seats anyways because of the hate that's directed right now towards Donald Trump and the Republican Party. But that only takes you so far. If you want to actually retain voters, you have to offer and deliver something. So if the Democratic Party ran on, say, Medicare for All, that is a reason for people to actually come out and vote for you and continue to vote for you until you deliver on that promise. But if you just run on hating the other side, that's only going to last as long as that extreme hate exists. And, once Democrats start pushing out some of these Republicans, a lot of that hate, a lot of that anger is going to die down. So the Democratic Party needs some actual policies to hold on to. Hey, if you like this video, hit that subscribe button below and consider throwing me a few bucks on Patreon at patreon.com/therationalnational or therationalnational.com/join.